Someone else asked, "What's your name?" And Steve comes back with, "Jim. Jim."
You obviously know how to communicate, so use your words.
Jim.
Boom, thank you.
Jim Jones. I was scared. I was scared. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I wanted to cry.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep us bringing you terrifying paranormal content. Steve Dills and his best friend Chris Vaughn loved investigating the paranormal together. They were thrilled when they were brought onto popular streaming series The Ghost Finders. Steve became the show's resident historian, while Chris came on board as one of the camera operators. After a long day shooting at the Randolph County Infirmary, most of the cast and crew decided to spend the evening doing a paranormal investigation of their own. The owner of the infirmary, Dan, offered to let them into a church he'd recently bought in Lynn, Indiana. Steve and Chris were warned that no one had investigated the church before, so they might not find anything. In spite of that, the team decided to go check it out.
It's myself, Chris, Brittany Isley, Patty Negri, Megan was there, like a bunch of the folks, most of the cast and a huge portion of the crew. We all kind of decided this is what we're going to do tonight. We get to this building and it is this quaint, tiny little church that's sitting in a neighborhood. And I guess it was a pretty tight-knit community, because I remember when we pulled up, people were kind of like staring at us out their windows, and just on their front porches and whatnot. And it just felt very it was very awkward.
Kind of like we know that y'all aren't from here.
Yeah.
So what are you doing here, and why are you standing out front of this church?
So we're standing there, and finally, a minute or two, Dan opens the doors and welcomes us in.
The group entered the little church, having no idea what they were walking into.
There's a room on the right, there's a little stage on the left, and you walk straight in. Walk past the pews, you have both pews on both sides, you walk right down the aisle, you step up onto where the pastor would be preaching the sermon.
I asked Dan, I'm like, Dan, you've got an asylum, you've got an old jail, you've got a creepy Victorian era house. Why did you buy this little small town church? What drove you to purchase this church, stacked up against all the other locations that you own? And he says, that's easy, the history. And I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know history happened out here in Indiana, I'm sorry. So I'm like, what's the history? And he's like, well, it's world history what happened here. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Dan. And he's like, well, you know Jim Jones, right? And then he proceeds to share with us that the church that we were standing in at that exact moment was the childhood church of Jim Jones.
Notorious cult leader Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in the 1950s. In public, he claimed to preach a blend of socialism and Christianity in an environment that was welcoming to all. Behind closed doors, he controlled his followers through fear, surveillance, and abuse. Jones eventually moved the headquarters of the People's Temple to a remote settlement in Guyana. He named the settlement Jonestown, promising that it would be a utopia. Instead, in 1978, he and his closest followers ordered the residents of Jonestown to drink poisoned punch, forcing or shooting anyone who refused. Over 900 people died in the massacre, including Jones, who shot himself.
I felt ill-prepared as soon as he dropped the bomb that we were in Jim Jones's childhood church. I felt like I should have prepared for that more, just mentally, and just be ready to walk into something.
But I mean,
like
at the same time, nobody had really investigated at that point.
No.
We had no idea that was the church.
We wanted to let our hair down a little bit. And I think that, we should have taken precautions that we just absolutely tossed out the window, because We were tired. We wanted to have some fun. We wanted to have a good time. I remember our cameraman decided that that was it for him at that moment. And
he was out.
He packed up his equipment and grabbed a ride back to the hotel. He said he thought that something felt off. Something was really dark there. And I'm like, well, we did just investigate an asylum. So, you know, we've got that going.
Yeah, but he even said, he was like, nah, this is different.
Yeah. And so he left immediately after that. And that left a couple of us to explore the building. We were up in the sanctuary. We explored that a little bit, learned a little bit about, you know, the history of Jim Jones being there and some of the activities that he did while he, you know, would have tended church. And then decided that we were going to kind of start investigating a little bit.
The group decided to split up. Chris headed to the attic while everyone else went to explore the basement.
It was like a maze in that basement. There were so many little rooms and little places and hallways that you could kind of just get lost down. So we were just exploring. And I remember coming back to one of the main big rooms, and there was this loud, absolutely loud thump directly above us.
This was my best. I could. Oh my god. I'm copywriting that right now.
Are you okay? What was that?
Everybody
Who
all
was
right?
that?
It honestly, the only way I can describe it is it sounded like somebody was picked up, turned horizontal, and then just dead weight dropped. It was an absolutely loud thud. And I remember watching the drop ceiling tiles actually shake. So whatever made this sound actually had, you know, some weight to it. So immediately we start freaking out. We're yelling up, you know, is everybody okay? Are you okay? Everybody all right? Where is everybody? Patty Negri is starting to try to count everybody. We make it upstairs, and I'm yelling for Chris.
You guys all right?
We're fine.
They didn't hear it. They didn't hear it.
We didn't hear anything.
Fucking police with these flashlights. Was it you? Damn.
No.
What was that noise?
Chris?
That wasn't me. I was standing still.
No.
And that kind of kicked off the evening. It was the weirdest way to start an investigation because, I don't know, for me, a lot of times when we go to these very first time investigated locations, there's not a whole lot of activity, not a whole lot going on. And so to have something so significant occur within the first half hour probably of being in this building probably should have been a sign, and we blatantly ignored it. Were we brave? No, we were dumb. This was all very bad decision making in real time. We decided that we're going to try to figure out where did that thump occur. We kind of identified based off of where Chris was standing versus where I was at with my camera, because we were able to go back and look at the footage. We realized that it was in this small little room right behind the sanctuary. You could feel it. When we walked into that room, it was the heaviest room, like hair on end. It felt like there was somebody watching you when you walked in, and not welcoming whatsoever. Absolutely, like you are trespassing in somebody's territory. This is their domain, this is their space, and you have no right to be here. So we decided that was the place to investigate. So we back out of this room, we grab the equipment, and we decide that we're going to do an Estes method session.
In an ST session, one person, dubbed the receiver, puts on a blindfold and noise-canceling headphones connected to a spirit box, which is a device that rapidly scans radio frequencies, creating white noise and audio fragments that spirits can use to communicate. Someone else asks questions out loud to whatever spirit might be present. Completely unaware of what's happening in the room, the receiver then says anything they hear, never knowing what the original question was, allowing the spirit to communicate through them.
I put the headphones on, I sit down. Chris and Brittany set up a tripwire that basically if something, and this was around one of the other doors that led to that private study area. There was nobody in that room, and so we thought that would be a good spot to put a tripwire, just in case anything tries to move through that space. It's gonna light up. It's gonna kick off.
It started out as normal, Hey, I'm Chris. Can you please tell me your name? It just slowly got more dark. It got uncomfortable. It started to say things like, gonna give you a heart attack, back away, back off. And then at one point, either myself or someone else asked, what's your name? And Steve comes back with, Jim.
I need a name. You obviously know how to communicate, so use your words.
Jim.
Boom, thank you. That's all I needed.
Jim Jones. He had his eyes closed, but he was still looking around the room. Almost like he was there and he was just kind of like watching what was happening with us. Which is odd because usually he's, slumped down and just spitting out whatever he says. You would hear like a thump or the tripwire, and immediately after that he would say something like, did you see that? I know you saw it. What are you doing? Why don't you come over here? And it was just muggy. The room was just muggy. Best way to I could describe it is it was already heavy when you walked in, but then it just kind of blanketed down onto you.
And there was one point I started counting down numbers, and as I hit 0, the tripwire went off.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
We count down to
1.
His phone just
There was a
vibrated on 1.
vibration.
Don't do that.
Someone's phone vibrated on 1. Oh! Thank you for setting that light off.
Something is off. Something is very, very weird here. It did feel like it was building, like it was progressing, like we were going to get to this crescendo.
I was extremely dizzy, had vertigo, and so I sat in the sanctuary, and I'm not really a super religious person. I have my own ideologies on things, but it was the first time in a long time that I decided that I needed to pray. Just pray to whatever. Didn't know what it was. Just I needed to pray because I was scared. I was scared. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I wanted to cry. And so I prayed. I told whatever it was, you gotta back off. You gotta back off. I'll come talk to you again. That's fine. But you have to back off. This isn't cool. You have to leave. You have to go back. And I sat there 5-10 minutes, started feeling better, started feeling like myself again. And when I got up and I walked back in, I didn't even walk into the room. I was in the threshold of the door, and I was leaned up, and when I walked in and I leaned over and he said, "Welcome back, Chris," immediately my heart sank into my stomach, and I was like, this isn't good. This is back to what I was feeling about 5-10 minutes ago.
I started to feel like I was, I guess, in a daze. And the only way I can explain it is I felt like I was co-host of my own body. Kind of similar, like we're both sharing, one camera here, or a single mic. It felt like somebody else was sitting with me, also talking, also directing me to do things, and I've never felt that.
I was scared because at this point, Steve and I had been on so many investigations together, traveled together, basically attached to the hip. And this was the first time I have ever seen him like this, and I was like, I don't know what to do. This is something new and scary, and I don't know how he's going to end up, and is this going to be the end for us, and what we do.
I remember that there were some pretty personal things about, you know, people's family members. And I think that's when we got Jim again. That he wanted to play a game, whatever this thing was, kept saying that it wanted to play a game.
Oh,
Do you want
man,
to play?
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah, it kept saying, "Do you want to play? Do you want to play a game? Let's play a game. Let's play a game." It would make references to the lighthouse, which at the time we didn't know that the church. Well, we didn't know the church's name. It's the Lighthouse Church. A lot of folks that were in that room, well, 3 that were in there with Chris and I, all started to feel pain in their chest at one point. I remember Brittany saying that, and Megan and her friend that was there with us.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you said something like, "I've got you," or "Do you feel that?" or something along the lines of like, "I'm doing this."
Yeah, and it was, I mean, it was on point. Like, it was when they started to feel pain in their chest, I immediately mentioned it. And it wasn't just one person, it was everybody that was in that room. Because of how open we were, it allowed something to come through that I don't think wanted to really communicate. I think that whatever that was did want to impress negative thoughts and feelings and anxiety and discomfort. I started seeing these flashes of like images and pictures in my head, and one of them was it was as if I was out in a field and there were just people crawling towards me, but they were all bloody. And there was a figure, I presume to be a male figure of entity or whatnot, kind of like standing there in the center of this, and these people were kind of like almost flooding around him towards me. And it was very graphic in my head, and I'm like, this is not something like I'm not seeing something like this in TV. I'm not seeing this in movies, you know. And I love a good horror movie, but it felt like an invasion, right? And it would consistently show kind of, I guess, images of things of that nature, very, very dark, very, very expletive. I remember feeling like there was somebody like right in my face at one point, and I could make out almost this figure with this very shadowy, you know, silhouette and face. And it was a lot. It was very overwhelming. Because I'm just trying to sit there and listen to words that are coming in my ears and saying what I hear, and now I'm also just, you know, in my mind's eye seeing these things. And that to me was probably one of the more, I guess, horrific pieces of this. I've done Estes before where I've seen things while I'm under, if you will, but nothing that I guess R-rated, nothing that not even R-rated, but nothing that gory.
And then at one point I saw like a shadow figure, and I turned and I looked, and the same time that I looked, he goes, "Did you see that, or you saw me, or something along the lines of seeing that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then he goes, "That was me." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right, let's keep getting weirder."
So we eventually wrapped the session, and it was significantly longer than 10 minutes. I was in that session for a very long time. And that's kind of where I stopped remembering the evening. At that point, I vaguely remember some details, and then I completely don't remember others. I remember everybody deciding we're done. We're getting out of here. This was weird. I think we bit off a little bit more than we can chew. And so everybody was starting to pack up.
Yeah.
And then I guess I started wandering.
You had wandered and was standing in this little room. Like I said, when you first walk in, there was a room off to your right. He was just standing in the doorway there, and Brittany was like, Steve, you good? You all right? And he never acknowledged any of us, nothing. He just slowly wanders in that room, So everyone beelines and runs towards him.
Where did you go, Chris?
I went to the camera. So I grabbed the camera, and while everyone was around him, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm shoving, getting through all the people.
Yeah? Like, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I shoved the camera in his face, like Blair Witch style. Are you just wandering?
I don't know.
You were standing here for a while, like I could see you, and then you just came in here.
And when I say his pupils were so wide that there was no color, it was just black.
I think you need to be
I don't know.
close
This
too.
is
Like you need.
I think we should wrap
I think we need to wrap and go home.
and get out of here. Yep.
He looks at me. He's like, "Do you feel that?" Couldn't have said, "Yeah, I'm good." Nah, just, "Do you feel that?" And so I told him, I was like, "Hey man, like maybe we should come back out here. Like maybe take a break. Like sit down." So he sits down for a second. Everybody starts packing up again. Everyone goes back to keep doing the thing. No one's paying attention to Steve because he's possessed and it's Steve.
It's fine.
Yeah. So at that point, we turn around and he's standing right there where you would have the sermon.
Yeah.
Just staring like he was ready, like about to give you some fire and brimstone. And again, we were like, "Steve, you good? Steve, you good?" And you just, yeah. And then next thing I know, he had wandered up into the attic, and again, we run around trying to find him. Finally, find him up there, and we're like, "Man, you all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm good."
This place is creepy and goddamn ran off.
I agree. 100% agree. It's a whole different vibe.
Something does not feel right. I don't know why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Like I feel like me, but like I don't feel like me at all. You feel it?
No. You okay?
It is so weird. Is it not weird?
It is weird, but I could be feeling you.
What are you feeling? Can you describe it?
Like I am like lightheaded as shit, but like not in the way that I'm gonna like fall down, but I don't feel like myself, but I'm like, why is it so weird?
We drag you back downstairs. At this point, we're like, "Hey, we're done. Everything's almost packed up. Let's keep an eye on Steve." We walked out and we're kind of chit-chatting. Everyone's exhausted and tired. They all go back to the hotel.
And it's just
just
you, me,
you and I.
because this is when I start remembering things again.
Mm-hmm.
Is like I don't remember packing up. I don't remember any of the going upstairs, going into this room, standing in front of everybody. The next thing I remember is we're outside. I guess you had packed the car because I don't remember actually packing the car.
No, you were just standing there.
I just remember I'm in the middle of the road and Chris is standing there and Dan is locking up the building. And I remember telling you, like, "Man, we should go back in there. Just the two of us. We should go back in there."
Dan locked up. Dan said bye. And we're still standing there. And he's just looking at me. And he's just like, "I need to go back in there. We need to go back in there. We should break back in and go back in there." I'm like, "No."
It's 2 a.m. We've got to drive home that day. We've got a 13-hour drive ahead of us now. And I'm like we get it. We got to go back inside. We should go back inside. We can't leave yet. And you decided,
Yeah, no, screw that.
we're going now. We made our way back to the hotel, and Patty and Megan, and was Max? I think Max was there.
Max was there, yeah.
They were doing cleansings for everybody because it was intense. I mean, in terms of the activity and the experiences, we go to bed, wake up, and somehow drive home. The entire 13-hour trip. When, going back to the church, Chris and I get in the car and we're driving back to the hotel. And I didn't realize it until we were sitting there and we were talking about the evening. And, Chris was like, well, what did you think of the evening? And I'm like, well, it was all right. Like, we went into the basement and we had the whole, the thumping thing. We went and we did an SD session, and then we packed up and left. I was like, it didn't feel like we were there long. And he's like, you're missing an entire portion of the evening. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you don't remember wandering off like multiple times? No. And I guess to me at that point, I was like, that's almost crossing a line, I guess. Because I realized that I was not in control of my own actions at that point. That whatever decided to cohabitat this space was walking and talking just as if it was me. And I don't know, that's a very, I guess a very vulnerable thing. It's very odd. Especially that I have camera footage of me walking around and talking and interacting with people, and that I don't remember whatsoever.
The next weekend, Steve and Chris headed to investigate the paranormal at the Hanover Arts and Activity Center. They brought the daughter of their team member with them to help them film.
Everything's going, fine, perfectly fine. We actually had the most activity that night in that building that we've ever had. Just from seeing full body apparitions outside of windows to shadows and the whole 9 yards. We were hearing things everywhere. But we go to the basement. And the basement of that building is set up as a daycare center. And so we go to the basement, we decide we're gonna do an Estes. And I sit down, put on my headphones.
And while he was doing an Estes, behind our team member that was filming us, there's a AC unit. And the AC was running, and this AC unit hasn't made a peep the entire time. But as soon as he puts on the Estes, as soon as he starts going under, this thing just makes the loudest, like someone punched the side of it. And did it once, scared the crap out of her, scared the crap out of me. He had no idea. And never did it again. That was the one time.
And one of the first things I'm pretty sure I asked was, do you want to play a game? And I didn't black out for any of this experience, but I knew as soon as I heard the words and I said them, do you want to play a game? It immediately, to me, clicked. Like it felt like we were back in Indiana, back at this church, and it just continued to get weirder and weirder. I know at one point you had asked, where are you? And I had responded, the lighthouse.
Yeah, and then again, like Steve said, it immediately clicked, but I wasn't wanting to. I wanted to get a little more information. I didn't want to just kind of go down the rabbit hole of like, oh, I know who you are, everything. So, when I asked where are you, he said the lighthouse, and I said, well, that's funny. I've never investigated a lighthouse, and he says, Indiana, and I'm like, all right, yeah, it's here. During the SD session, Steve says, I see you. And I said, oh, you do? Where are you? And he says, behind the door. And I'm like, oh, okay, what door? And he says, the small door. And me joking, I was like, oh, okay. And then I opened the door and I walked through it all creepily like. And Steve says something along the lines of like, welcome or good job, something like that.
I remember seeing there was an apparition behind that door as well afterwards.
There was, yeah.
When I came out, I was like, nope. This is like this correlated too much to the same mannerisms and words and phrases that I guess we had experienced at the Jim Jones church, and I was not there for it. I was ready to rumble. So I think we were both, as well as Melissa, were both like all pretty much set that this was the end of the night for us. And so we went upstairs, packed up. The light switch is on the exact opposite side of the building as the front door. So the three of us decided that we would all together go and turn the light switch off, because we've only been investigating the paranormal for over a decade now, that we were going to all turn the light off and then
Scooby-Doo it out of there.
yeah, quickly make our way to the door. So that kind of ended the very first, I think,
That was the first time outside of Indiana.
that we had this kind of follow us home. And I say that was the first time because every single investigation, including public events where Chris, and it had to be both of us. It couldn't just be me, it couldn't just be Chris. Both of us would sit down to do an SE session, and within a couple minutes, that session would pretty much go to, do you want to play a game? And that was almost like the opening phrase.
Yeah.
It was like, do you want to play a game?
Yeah, like, do you want to play a game? I want to play. The group of people were there, and Steve went under. Typical, thinking it was going to be normal. Next thing I know, Chris. Yeah, hey, I know you know me. Do you want to play a game? Yeah, sure. What kind of game do you want to play? Do you want to play tag? Do you want to play? And as soon as I said hide and seek, he said hide and seek at the same time. And you're not gonna lie, it freaked me out. But I the public's there, you gotta act cool. So I said, oh, okay, well, if you want to play hide and seek, do you want me to find you? And he says, find me. I said, oh, okay, well, are you behind, and I'll point out, so are you behind that door? And he goes, no. And I said, oh, you behind that door? He goes, no, the small door. And the one thing that I really left out was how tiny this door that I walked through really was. It was designed for toddlers.
Yeah.
And so as soon as he said the small door, I immediately knew that whatever was communicating with us was the same one that we were communicating with at Hanover Arts and Activity Center, and that same entity was the same one that we communicated with at the Jim Jones Church in Lynn, Indiana.
Yep.
After that, like Steve says, it took over. It took over every single session. Any session that him and I both did together.
It didn't matter where, it didn't matter what we were doing, who else was around us. Every single Estes session after that would go back to, let's play a game. I'm behind the small door.
Jim.
The lighthouse, Jim. So you might be having an interaction with something that's there, and the next thing you want to play a game. And I don't know, it's that lack of caring is just, I don't know.
It's upsetting.
Yeah, it was a very upsetting experience.
Yeah, it's definitely, for me at least, it's very disrespectful, and it to this day, it's still just talking about it puts a kind of that anger and burning feeling in my chest, that whatever it is draws on, and it fed on that for a long time.
Oh yeah. And that happened for almost a half a year.
Yeah, it got to the point where we got tired. We were
done.
We were legit just tired of it.
Like I was ready to throw in the towel in investigating entirely. It was one of the scariest experiences, just based off of the longevity. That something, followed us 13 hours back, and then decided that we were going to be kind of it's prey, for a number of months.
And we had both kind of I don't even think we both verbally agreed to it at this point, but we both, I think, acknowledged that this needed to stop.
The less attention Steve and Chris gave the spirit, the more aggressive it became. It even began tormenting Steve and Chris at home with their loved ones.
I had seen things in my house, shadow figures, to the point where my girlfriend at the time, she almost smoked the entire house out with sage.
Oh my God, I remember that night.
Oh yeah, just billows of smoke. And yeah, by the end of it, like I said, it'd been 6-7 months at this point. We were both exhausted. We were tired of it.
We were having things happen in our house, and that's not typical. You know, sometimes you bring hitchhikers home, but I mean, we were hearing footsteps throughout the house, conversations, the whole thing. So it was something that equally ate at me, because it wasn't just impacting me now, but also my family. And same for Chris. And so it was definitely one of the most intense experiences. I started sitting out on investigations and events, specifically because I didn't want to connect with whatever that was. I mean, every time that I came out of one of those sessions, I was absolutely drained, exhausted, and it just, I don't know, it left you feeling almost void in a sense. It was not warm and fuzzy. It was
Powerful.
Yeah, it felt like, you know, not to the extreme at the Lighthouse Church, but every time it felt like I was co-host again. And I did not like that feeling. It was, I don't know, I don't want to say terrifying, but it was just that inevitable, I know this is going to happen if I do this. And to have something that was so fun and I was so passionate about, now that I'm actually scared of sitting down and investigating, because I don't know, am I going to have the same experience that I had at that church?
Desperate to make the paranormal torment stop, Steve and Chris learned everything they could about Jim Jones's time at the church.
We knew that young Jim Jones would have been at that church, but we also found out that the pastor of that church was very radical, and his belief set and structure was pretty intense. And Jim, as I guess he was like a tween into his teenage years. Yeah. His mother was taking him to different churches, different congregations to try to find a church for, you know, their family.
Yeah, that she felt was suited for him.
They attended the Lighthouse Church once, and she realized that it was way too radical for them. Jim, on the other hand, loved it. And so he started attending church in secret at the Lighthouse Church. It was during this time that he was holding mock funerals for roadkill, yeah. Daily. He would go and have a small coffin made and host a funeral for whatever animal he found dead or otherwise was dead, and he would host a funeral. Still don't understand how he would find roadkill daily. So I just kind of have in the back of my head always that he's probably doing some nefarious things already at this young age. And a lot of kind of his belief structure and belief set stemmed from this church, from that pastor. And that's where he started expanding, getting his own congregation, and then ultimately moving to Guyana, everything.
The spirit began telling Steve and Chris that it wanted to return to the church.
Chris and I have discussed that at length as to would we, and you know, even my wife, we've talked about it, and she's like, you will never go back to that location. You won't ever go back. It wasn't until Brittany, she had an opportunity to go back to the church. And so she decided to do that after Chris and I were like, that is a horrible idea.
She's like, no, it'll be fine.
It'll be great. So she decides to go back to the church. And so because she was there, we decided, you know what? We're gonna FaceTime you while you're there. So Chris drove over to my house and we FaceTimed Brittany, and she set her phone down in that room where we had this experience. And I remember us just sitting there like, just talking, like, this is over. This is
far
it.
enough. This is done. We're done. You need to stay there.
Yeah.
Like you kept saying, bring me back, take me back. And well, you're basically was saying, well, you're back now. We brought you back.
After we hung up, it felt like we were done.
Yeah.
Like it finally felt like somebody closed the book. And I don't know that had Brittany not just happenstance gone, I'm not sure that book would be closed.
The spirit may have released Steve and Chris for now, but they're not convinced it's left them for good.
I'll be honest, I don't know about you, but even now as we're talking about it, in the back of my mind, we're talking about it.
So we're kind of drudging it back up.
Is that book about to be just cracked open a little bit? And here we go. Here's another 6 months.
Yeah, I know that if we sat down and did an Estes and we got that again, I'd shut it down. I'd walk away. I'd be done for the evening, and I'd probably be done for that month.
Yeah, we both agreed that if it ever came back through, that we would just be done.
Did you see the lights flicker too?
It's been flickering since this whole time.
It's weird. But yeah, we agreed. If it happens, we sit down and I say, let's play a game, or any of the key phrases, done. We're out. We're shutting it down. Because I don't want that to happen again. And what really scares me is I don't like bringing things home. I don't want it to be scaring my kids or my wife when they're not the ones going out trying to seek this out. So they shouldn't be at the receiving end of, the detrimental side of it. I don't think that I would go back inside of that building. This is the hard part, because part of me is like, that's a really dumb idea, Steve. You should never do that. And the other part of me is like, but what if, right? What if? And I do think that it's left an impact and almost like a string. It's like a rope, right? Like I kind of feel like I'm tied to that location, and at any moment it's gonna start pulling, and it's be like, all right, it's time to come back. It's time to come back. Let's go. I am afraid of what would happen in that aspect. Is it going to double down? Is that just going to be nail in the coffin in terms of investigating? I'm definitely an explorer at heart. I like to adventure. I like to explore and kind of push the boundaries of the unknown, if you will. And I'm afraid, I guess, to me, that if that comes back, that it's gonna. To me, I think it would be enough for me to just completely set it down and walk away, completely, entirely, and be done.
I think my biggest fear would be it consuming my life again.
Yeah.
And I have had spirits come through in my home. I've seen things, I've heard things, but I don't want that. I don't want that in my house. I don't want to see that. I don't like that invasion of privacy. And to have that happen, and to have that happen again, I think that would be the nail in the coffin for me. Is that from there on out, I would not. My investigation, my equipment would go right out the window.
I think bravery and stupidity have a very fine line between them, and I think that what we did was throwing caution to the wind. I think that when we walked in there and learned that it was Jim Jones's church and we started having the experiences that we were having, probably shouldn't have pushed as hard as we did. We probably shouldn't have stayed for 4 hours. We probably should have, said we were going to be there for 1 hour and stuck to it. And so I think coming out of it, yeah, I definitely felt very vulnerable. And I've even, when I'm doing SD sessions now, I try to be very conscientious of what am I saying, and what am I feeling, right? Because one of the things that to me scares me the most is that lack of control. Like it was as if you get blackout drunk and you're doing and saying things that are uncharacteristic of you. That is kind of how it felt for me. I came out of it and I was exhausted and I don't remember any of it. And I hate that. I have a bad memory as is. I don't want to actively pursue something where I'm now just 2 hours of your life you don't remember any of. And that scares me. That definitely scares me. And it's something where I'm very conscious of, especially when we go to new locations. I think it's changed me. I'm definitely a lot more when we go to locations, especially locations that we don't know. Guard is up a lot more.
We walked into the Jim Jones church unguarded, had no clue what was going to happen. Just was trying to have fun. And now after this situation and this scenario, for me at least, I feel like I have to sometimes walk on eggshells because of that little voice in the back of my mind going, hey man, be a little careful, because what happens if that thing comes back?
Yeah.
A massive thanks to Steve and Chris, a lovely and dynamic duo for sure. Next time, we'll hear a true scary story about a haunted house with a collection of angry entities so strong they went for the jugular. Thank you from all of us at Fright of My Life. And remember, you're not alone, and you never were.